Hey everyone, welcome. So if you're just starting your journey with Go, or Golang, either way, one of the very first concepts you have to get your head around is variables. Seriously, they're the absolute bedrock of the language.
So, what are you going to learn in the next 5 minutes? Well, we're going to get straight to the point. My goal is to make sure you walk away from this with a really solid foundation. We're going to cover what variables actually are, how they work specifically in Go, and we'll look at the 3 main ways you can declare them. And, super important, I'll show you some common beginner mistakes so you can sidestep those right from the get-go. All right, let's jump right in.
Okay, first things first. What even is a variable? I know, it sounds a little technical, but trust me, the concept is actually super simple. In the world of programming, a variable is basically just a container. That's it. It's like a named spot in your computer's memory where you can store a piece of data that your program needs to use.
You know, the best way to think about it is like a labeled box. Seriously, you give the box a name, say username, and then you put something inside of it, like the name John. The cool part is, later on, you can find that exact box just by its name to see what's inside or even swap out the contents for something totally different.
And really, that's their whole job. Variables give your program a memory. Think about it, a player's score, a customer's age, the price of an item. All of that stuff is stored in variables. It's how your code remembers things and uses that information later.
Now, one of the cool things about Go is that it gives you a few different ways to create or, declare these variables. Let's walk through the 3 main ways you'll be doing this. All right, let's start with the first method, the long form. This is the most explicit, and honestly, it's the easiest to understand when you're just starting out. You literally use the word var, you give your variable a name, you tell Go exactly what type of data it will hold, like string for text, and then you give it a value. You're spelling everything out for Go.
But like I said, Go is a smart language. It can often figure things out on its own. And that brings us to our second method, type inference. So here, you still use var, and you still give it a name and a value, but you just leave out the type. Go sees the number 30, and it just knows, aha, that's got to be an integer. It's way cleaner, and it means less typing for you.
And that leads us to the third, and by far the most common way you'll see variables created in Go code. It's called the short variable declaration. Instead of var, you use this special : operator. And this thing is a powerhouse. It does 3 things at once. It creates the variable, it figures out the type, and it assigns the value, all in one clean step.
I mean, just look at them side by side. The difference is pretty clear, right? The short declaration is just so much more concise, and it does the exact same thing as the long, explicit version. This is a huge reason why Go developers love it. It makes the code faster to write and easier to read.
Okay, but here's the one really important rule you have to remember with this. You can only use the short declaration inside of functions. For any variables you declare outside of functions, at what we call the package level, you have to stick with the var keyword. That's a big one, so don't forget it.
All right, so we know we can store data in these containers, but what kind of data are we talking about? Let's take a quick look at the most common types you'll be using.
Okay, these 4 right here are your fundamental building blocks. You've got string for any kind of text, int for whole numbers, float 64 for any numbers with a decimal point, and bool, which is just for true or false values. Seriously, if you master these 4, you can build a ton of stuff in Go. Now, they're called variables for a reason, right? Because their values can vary or change. But what about when you have a value that should never, ever change? Let's see how Go handles both of those situations. Okay, pay close attention to the syntax here. The first time, we use @= to both create and set the age variable. But after that, anytime we want to update it, we just use a single =. That little distinction is absolutely crucial. And then, on the flip side, if you have a value that has to stay the same, like pi, for example, you use the const keyword instead of var. Once you set a constant, that's it. Its value's locked in, it cannot be changed. Simple as that. Variables can change, constants are fixed. And speaking of important distinctions, let's cover a couple of the most common mistakes that trip up people who are new to Go. We'll start with probably the biggest one. This right here, this is the classic beginner mistake. You try to use /mi on a variable that you've already created. Just remember, /mi is only for declaring a new variable for the first time. If you do this, Go will get mad and give you an error that says something like no new variables on left side of /mi. So,
The correct way to do it, like we just talked about, is to declare it once with semicolon, equal sign, and from then on, you update it with a plain old equals. If you can get that muscle memory down, you're going to save yourself so much time staring at error messages.
Okay, so we've gone through all the mechanics, the how-to, but let's just zoom out for a second. Why is this stuff so important? Why does mastering variables actually matter?
Well, because they are literally everywhere. Anytime your program needs to handle user input, do a calculation, pull data from a database, or run some kind of business logic for an API, guess what? You're using variables. They are the absolute foundation of pretty much every real-world app you will ever build.
And look, I know it might seem like a small first step, but it is a huge one. The moment you get comfortable creating and changing variables, you're not just memorizing syntax anymore, you're actually starting to think in Go. So there you have it. You've now got the most essential building blocks of the language right at your fingertips. The only real question left is, what are you going to build first?